Paul Neary. I'm Jay's brother. And Jay was, when he was born, I was 18 years old.
My mom was about like 43 years old at the time, and she was done having kids. But I didn't know that, and so I was like, Mom, could we have another baby? Could we, when are we gonna have another baby in the house? And she's like, oh, any day now, Janet.
And was she surprised when she knew she was pregnant for Jay? But pleased. And I always remember his grandmother saying to me one time, she was so happy for Margaret because she knew in later years there'd be somebody home there.
I came home from school one day and my mother sat me down. I came in, I guess, I don't remember all the details, but I came in and she said, Paul, come into the living room. I want to sit down. I have something to tell you. And I'm thinking, oh no, she's going to tell me she's got cancer, or something like that. And she says, I'm going to have a baby. And I think for the only time in my life, I could feel my jaw just go.
I was over in Nam when he was born. They sent me pictures of him. And I was in a hut and stuff with the guys, and I'm showing the pictures of Sean, of Jay. Oh, that's your son, that's your son? I said, no, that's my brother.
And I was thrilled. My parents were probably not so thrilled.
My mother was 44 at the time, or close, I guess, maybe 43 when she told me. My father was like 50 or 51.
And I came home and stuff, and he was sitting on the couch, and I said, hi, Mom and Dad, and where's the kid? And he's on the couch, and I get to hold him. I got to hold him the first time.
When they brought him home from the hospital, they put him on the dining room table, I guess, because that's what you did with kids in those days or something like that. Put him on the dining room table. And I remember looking at him going, hey, he ain't that cute.
We thought he was like the ugliest thing we had ever seen because he had like no eyebrows and he was like kind of all scrunched up, and we were like, that's him?
And I can remember being up there for many lunches after Jay was born because she couldn't go out as freely. And Jay would be sitting in the high chair and we'd be munching our tuna fish sandwiches.
I met Jay the very first time. He was 5 years old, and we met at the field across from Sacred Heart for the Bicentennial Festival. And Paul was my teacher at the time, and we ran into each other, and he took me over and introduced me to his little brother. And he was a typical, really cute little 5-year-old kid.
When he got a little bit bigger, into 5, 6, or 7, when he got into the stage where, he started to become very interested in how things worked, or how to take things apart and where to find tools and stuff like that. He always seemed to have this mechanical inclination. And I think, as my sister is related several times, it's like, he would take apart just about everything in the house.
I know when he was younger, he probably messed up a little bit with fixing things. I've heard the story about the explosions and all.
He had a alarm clock radio, and he took it all apart one day, and then he put it back together, and then he had left a few parts out, and he was like, So he went downstairs to ask my dad, what these are, and my dad was like, well, they're resistors. And so he's like, whatever. So he plugs it in and goes, I guess the thing went like that. And he told me later on that day, Janet, that's how I learned what resistors are for.
A screwdriver was his best friend, and he would just continue to take things apart. And I guess he was figuring out what was going on inside of them, because he certainly wasn't learning how to put them back together again, because they rarely got back together in the same condition that they originally were. He
loved WCBS talk radio. That was like a big favorite thing of his, and I guess, kind of foreshadowing his love of NPR later on in life. And I told him, well, yeah, I like WCBS talk radio too. And I said, sometimes I like to fall asleep to it, because it's like just something you can listen to and fall asleep, rather than like music, which sometimes kind of distracts you from falling asleep. And so he's like, yeah, that's a really good idea, to fall asleep to it. So I went out, I was probably working, I came home that night. Our rooms were right next to each other, and our closets were back to back. He had drilled a hole through between the two closets and run speaker wire and put one of his speakers in my room, and so we could listen to WCBS at night together. And for like a year after that, he would call us WCBS brother and sister.
His sense of humor started early, And he always had that sense of humor and stuff. Off the wall as it was, but he always had that sense of humor.
I always remember Paul and Jay like wrestling at the house, and their mother did the same thing that I did with them, and go, "Will you guys knock it off?"
You know, as a much bigger brother, we used to wrestle a little bit. You know, I mean, I always wrestled with my sister. I wrestled with him.
I remember the day. I remember it so clearly. The day that all of a sudden Paul couldn't win anymore.
Somewhere in like high school or, yeah, probably high school, you know, he somehow or other got his hands on some kind of like, you know, like a weight bench and some free weights and things like that. And then, I don't know, it seemed like overnight, he just all of a sudden became like huge. And I mean, it wasn't overnight, but within a couple of years, I mean, it was, if I started wrestling with him, I mean, he could just sort of like knock me down and push me out of the way. I mean, it was kind of embarrassing.
Oh, everybody hated it. It was annoying. They were grown men and they were like fooling around like they were little boys.
Looking back, well, all through, I guess, school mostly, I don't think school was his thing. He just liked to be active and doing things. And as he got older, he wasn't thinking about college as much as fixing those cars, and he loved that. That was his main thing.
When I finally graduated from college, he came and helped me out. He helped me pick out my first car, a Dodge Daytona, and I had broken up with a boyfriend, and that boyfriend had done all my car maintenance for me, so I was like totally lost about what to do about a new car and everything and what to pick out. And Jay came with me. He was only 15 at the time, but I remember him talking to the guys in the dealership for me and everything.
Well, I met Jay when I started dating Janet, her brother, and at the time he was still a senior in high school. And I remember his mom asking him if he had done his homework and then recounting to me about how he was a smart boy but never really wanted to really focus with school. He was always great at doing things with his hands and just hoping that he could get through that last year of high school so he could go to college and you know, hopefully, you know, get himself a good job.
I work on the weekends and about 3 days during the week, so about 5 days during the week, about 27 hours.
You sure about that? And it's not like 27 and a half or 26 and a half hours?
Actually, it's 27 3/4 hours because I get Sundays screwed up.